Some folks coming in still? All right. I think we're all here, President accounted for. All right, well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me here today. When I delivered my State of the City address last month, I shared with San Diegans how the City of San Diego is confronting a significant structural budget deficit. I made a commitment at that time to the people of this city that we will confront this structural deficit head on, make tough choices now in order to ensure that we can maintain the services that they count upon. Key to doing that is fiscal responsibility, making prudent financial decisions on behalf of the taxpayers of this city to ensure that the organization continues to deliver those services that residents depend upon the most. This fiscal responsibility is work that I take extremely seriously, and is work that I've done not just as the mayor of this great city, but also as a council member, as a city council president, and as chair of the council's budget committee. And for the past 4 months, I have been reviewing our city budget and our financial obligations with our experts in the Department of Finance, as well as with our department directors. Now, I've pursued additional revenue-generating measures, and that work is ongoing. I've carefully considered operational efficiencies in order to save taxpayer money, and to the greatest extent possible, minimize service reductions and avoid layoffs. After this thorough evaluation, I'm announcing a series of operational efficiencies, reductions, and consolidations to the City of San Diego that go into effect immediately. And these changes start at the top. Pursuant to the city charter, the mayor is conferred with the executive authority and responsibilities of the city manager, which has historically been performed by the chief operating officer. Today, I'm electing to retain those responsibilities of city manager, and I am eliminating the position of chief operating officer. Going forward, this means the city's executive team will report directly to me. I'm also consolidating the Office of Chief Operating Officer, Department of Government Affairs, and the Office of Boards and Commissions into the Office of the Mayor. I want to sincerely thank Eric Dargan for his service to our city and for his time in service here in San Diego. In addition to streamlining leadership, I'm also consolidating several city departments. I'll explain those to you right now. The Sustainability and Mobility Department, which will be transferring their work to the Departments of Transportation, General Services, Engineering and Capital Projects departments. The Department of Cultural Affairs will move into the Economic Development Department and become a division of that department. The Office of Child and Youth Success will move into the Youth and Family Services Division in the Library Department, whose work is to uplift and support young people, which will continue. The Department of Race and Equity will transfer its work to the Human Resources Department. And the incredible work accomplished by the Department of Race and Equity since its inception has laid a strong foundation that I'm extremely proud of. And the training of our Race and Equity team has developed for all city employees, and the work that they've done to embed an equity lens into our budget process has institutionalized equity in ways never before achieved. I intend to continue to have this happen as a part of our city's Human Resources Department. Now, none of this is a signal of retreat from these issues or these priorities, but rather a repurposing of this work within the means and resources that we have. I'm very proud of the work that our Sustainability and Mobility team, our leaders in race and equity, as well as our cultural affairs offices, and all of that work will continue. Lastly, I'm beginning the process of eliminating vacant positions that have been budgeted across our organization in order to put those dollars to use elsewhere. So as part of my reorganization today, I'm eliminating an additional 16 vacant unclassified management positions that will result in a savings of $2.8 million. All in all, everything that I've just shared with you, the elimination of 31 positions, will net an annual savings of over $5 million taxpayer dollars. This is $5 million that we'll have available to us to put toward keeping police on our streets, not browning out fire stations, continuing our progress of fixing the damn roads, and getting more homeless into housing. This has always been my goal in this moment that we faced, to protect core services that San Diegans expect. The actions I'm enacting today are not easy, but I believe reflect government efficiencies that are necessary and a full implementation of the strong mayor form of government that voters approved back in 2004. As I shared in my State of the City address, I refuse to let our financial challenges stall the progress that we have made. San Diego will not move backward. We will also not ignore reality and hope that things improve on their own. What we will do, and what I am doing today, is take action to improve the situation right now. San Diegans should know that your city government is making tough calls right now so that we can avoid even harder decisions down the road. And as we move forward, I will continue to lead this city with transparency about where we stand, the will to make the tough yet responsible decisions for our future, and most of all, a steadfast commitment to serve the people of San Diego. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
What are the savings associated with the consolidated departments beyond any vacant positions that were eliminated from those?
Well, the tally of what I so 5.4.
Where do they come from? Where do the savings actually come from, if not just reducing vacancies or eliminating vacancies?
So eliminating vacancies is a part of that. When departments are formed, they do carry an administrative cost that comes with them. Again, positions, there's just overhead that gets eliminated. I'll be very transparent. We are asking certain departments to do more, right? So in the library department, to take on the Office of Child and Youth Success, I believe in our director of the library services. I think she's very capable. That will be a part of her responsibilities. That work was performed by somebody else. That will no longer be done. So there's capacity there is what I'm saying. So generally speaking, it is the positions. We are a service organization. Most of our costs are associated with employee costs, but there is general overhead that will be eliminated by the consolidation of these departments.
At a budget committee meeting a couple weeks ago, there was a lot of people who brought up the COO, a lot of council members. I'm sure you heard that. And the president of the Municipal Employees Association, they were all kind of like, where is Eric Dargan, who is managing this city? And so I guess, how do you react to that? Did you have concerns about Dargan's management of the city?
I don't react to that. Today's announcement is budgetarily driven. This and the other positions, total of 31 that we're eliminating today, are all driven by our need to balance our city's budget and doing it in a way that maintains as much service as we can in our neighborhoods. Obviously, internal reductions like the ones I'm announcing today, in particular the elimination of the Office of Chief Operating Officer, is a way that I can see making reductions with substantial savings that don't impact neighborhood service levels.
So no concerns about his performance?
We have made a decision based on budgetary needs at the moment. And that's not a reaction to anything. That is other than our fiscal situation that we're currently in. Remind you all, you may forget, different levels of government, the city is required to balance its budget. It's not optional. So we have to make tough choices. I don't get to print money like they do in federal government. I've got to balance this budget. This is a way to do that, again, without reducing neighborhood service levels.
Were any other employees actually eliminated?
Homelessness programs, housing commission,
Yeah.
shelters supposed to come online?
No announcements to that. In fact, John, you may remember in my State of the City address, despite the reductions we need to make, my commitment is to increase our number of beds in our city, right? And I know that's a bit odd, right, when we're talking about reductions, but when I go around the city, the number one thing people talk to me about is homelessness. So even in this time of austerity, we're going to find ways to get more beds. And you saw just on Friday, the San Diego Housing Commission voted to move forward with a 200-plus bed shelter in downtown San Diego. That came on the heels of the council's action earlier in the week, providing me direction to try and find a new facility here in downtown, as well as add more beds at Veterans Villages on Pacific Highway. So the takeaway from this is that there will be more budget news in the months ahead. This is not a budget introduction. These are cuts I'm taking now in order to yield savings for next year's budget, right? But this is $5.4 million worth of budget cuts. More will surely come. But you hear me again and again. The commitment is public safety, homelessness, housing, and infrastructure. We're going to do our level best to maintain or potentially increase service levels in any of those areas. Naturally, that will necessarily come at the expense of other services that we have to provide. But my hope is that we continue to address this comprehensively. You've seen the City Council take action to increase revenues. You see us taking steps to try and reduce costs, both the reductions today, as well as doing things like renegotiate or vacate leases of privately owned facilities the city is currently using. all of these things rolled up together will give us to that balanced budget that we're legally required to provide, but hopefully doing it in a way that doesn't make reductions to key neighborhood services and certainly not to homelessness, where I'm still hopeful that through economizing that we can actually find ways to actually increase service levels in that particular issue. A reflection, again, of the city's priorities.
Besides the COO and the vacant positions, were any other jobs eliminated or under consideration to be eliminated?
Well, we have the 31 positions that are mentioned today, right? So COO plus 30 additional. Most of those are, I believe all of them but one was vacant. So, but that's costs that we still have on the books. So those are going to come off. And that's permanent. That's go forward. In terms of where other things considered, of course, everything is on the table. We can leave no stone unturned. It's a $258 million budget deficit. And so more cuts will come. Today's about 5.4 million, right? So to John's question a moment ago, more will surely come. But again, it's a comprehensive approach. As I stated in the State of the City address, it's not just cutting our way to balance. It's making sure that we do the structural changes that are necessary. And as I also mentioned in that same speech, not simply doing things the way they've always been done. When the strong mayor form of government was created, the first strong mayor created a chief operating officer. That has been the status quo for the last 20 years or so. When doing this wholesale examination of the way that we're doing business today and whether or not it needs to continue that way, this was one reduction that we could identify. I believe that we can make this reduction. The people of San Diego won't necessarily feel it, and it will yield a substantial savings that we can avoid cuts elsewhere in our organization.
Like you mentioned, this is about 2% of the deficit. At the beginning of the speech, you talked about additional revenue-generating measures. Would those be able to be enacted in time to balance the budget before June?
Most of what we're looking at is possible, yes. And I don't know if I need to repeat the question, but in terms of the revenue that we're looking at, and you've seen the City Council already take action on parking meters. Additional action may happen there. Our comprehensive user fee update is advancing. Those two combined, at least currently, is somewhere in the order of $40 million. You see the implementation of a refuse collection fee. You see the yielding, hopefully, of a tourism tax increase that was approved by the voters almost 5 years ago that has not been resolved. We believe that will get resolved soon, and that will yield some additional dollars. So, you roll all up those things I mentioned to you now is somewhere on the order of 150 million or so. So we're getting there. But my message to San Diegans is that there's a lot between now and final budget adoption in June that we're going to have to go through. Today is simply a step in that process to show how serious the situation is and how we're making internal efficiencies before we ask the people of this community to yield or have to experience any kind of service level reductions.
What did you say the overall number was?
258, as currently constituted. I have to say, I remember when I became budget chair 55,000 years ago, and math was not my strong suit as a subject in school, right? Now, the good news is we have Department of Finance people who are fantastic at this. But one thing I learned about this is very much an art, not necessarily a science. And so that 258 is based upon our sort of forecast from a few months ago, right? That forecast will get continually updated as we advance towards final budget adoption. So that 258 could go up, right? Tariffs are enacted, costs for the city go up, people start spending less. These are all things that are concerning. We have a lot of federal employees in San Diego. What will that do if the unemployment rate goes up, right? So those are things that can work to the negative, or, maybe something positive happens. Gas prices come down. Your listeners and viewers and readers are probably very frustrated by the price of gas. I am too. The difference is they probably have 2 cars at home. I have over 4,500 vehicles here at the city of San Diego. So these kinds of things are all fluctuating inputs, but it's suffice to say it is a very significant budget deficit, and this administration is taking it extremely seriously with a focus on limiting pain to residents in neighborhoods while prioritizing public safety, homelessness, housing, and infrastructure.
So other thing,
So the city has 10,000 employees over that,
More than that.
and you're eliminating one of those today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a person whose position has been filled ever since this system of government was created 20 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not at all a reflection of his performance in the job.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to discuss personnel issues here in public. I mean, that would be regardless of the circumstances of the situation. Here's the thing. Eric Dargan is a good man. I've enjoyed serving with him, and this is just a decision we have to make. It's budgetarily informed. We have to balance the budget. And when you consider whether or not we want to have a city executive position or brownout fire stations, I'm not undecided on that question. And this is me doing that, right? And there's going to be more cuts to come. You're going to report about them. I'm interested to see how your reporting pans out. I suspect it'll be fairly emotional, right? I guess my point is this is just the start, guys. More is coming. But I want to communicate how serious we are and how we're prioritizing internal cuts to this organization before we ask taxpayers to experience a lower level of service. I also want to do what I can to protect employees who are here in terms of their jobs. It weighs heavy on me, the fact that people pay their bills and support their families based on the salaries we provide. And again, when considering whether or not you eliminate an executive position or a dozen mainline in the neighborhood staff positions, again, I'm not going to be undecided on that. These ones are providing direct service to the residents of our city. This one is here in City Hall. When having to make these choices, I think most San Diegans will make the same choice I'm announcing today.
Sorry, everybody, we're at time.
Yeah.
Given that the pension payout
Joey,
is
let's
a
run.
record high
Yeah.
this year, should the city have given the unions those raises, knowing that the budget deficit was imminent?
Well, a couple things about that. It's a great question. I've seen some writing about this recently. So my predecessors held pay flat for basically a decade. And during that same period of time, city employees' rent went up, their grocery bills went up, childcare bills went up, all of their costs went up while the salaries were being held flat. As a consequence, when I took over the office of the mayor, we had a tremendous number of vacancies in the city. Probably upwards of about 20% of the jobs around here did not have people sitting in those positions because the pay and the benefits were not competitive. We've spent the last number of years changing that and creating a situation where people want to come work here. We had a hiring fair a year or so ago. We had people wrapped around the block. People want to come work here. I think that they have a pretty decent boss. But the fact of the matter is we are paying wages and providing benefits to do attract high-quality talent to come here and serve the people of this city. I think that's appropriate. And it is a juxtaposition, yes, over previous practices. But what did those practices get us? Still structural budget deficit, but without being an employer of choice, really meaning that streetlights were being left unrepaired, potholes being left unaddressed. We have changed that. We had to necessarily raise pay, but it wasn't just a one-time hit. This is trying to amortize, almost a decade's worth of inflation that previous administrations just chose to overlook. So I think that's appropriate. With regard to where we're at, what I explained to John just a moment ago, when making those adjustments, you could not necessarily foretell where we would be. Where's Wall Street going to be? What are the returns there? What is the market going to do? We've made increases, so have other people. I would say we're basically at par with market. We'll have to find out. Again, this is the nature of the work that we do. I think the adjustments that were made were positive. It's got us to a situation where, we're not hemorrhaging talent like we have previously. In fact, we've brought some pretty high-quality folks here to help us do more on behalf of the people of the city. But relitigating past experiences, going back to some of the efforts that were done in the past that hurt our employees and really caused them to exit. Listen, I was a student of history for a reason. I'm not interested in repeating that going forward. Bottom line is this, we every single day have to pick up people's garbage, respond to the 911 calls, open up the libraries, and cut the grass at the parks. You can't do that without people. We did that for a while. It did not work well. We're changing that now, and we will get through this. I think that's also a message I want to make sure very clear. Every city employee I've talked to, if they've been here any appreciable amount of time, they've seen ups and they've seen downs. This is just what happens with our organization. My commitment to you all is to take every bit of the experience that you all have allowed me to have over 16 years in public office and put it to use to make sure that we balance this budget appropriately while maintaining the priorities that San Diegans have told me very clearly that they want. I think we're doing that. Today is a step in that general direction. There will be more to come. Reminder, we'll introduce a budget later this spring. We'll have, budget hearings in May and final adoption in June. So there's a lot of time between now and then, a lot more work to be done. But the bottom line is that I believe what we have done to date have been the right decisions. I think today's announcements are also the right decisions. And my goal going forward is to continue to make the right choices to do what is the goal for this year, which is to fundamentally address the structural budget deficit so that I'm not back here a year from now telling you the same story the way that we have been doing for so long in this building. That has to change. I'm prepared to make the tough decisions to make sure that is the case. And again, today is the first step in that direction. Thank you all.
From the budget committee meeting the other week, we heard comments about the COO.
Well, what's the question?
Vivian Moreno said that the belt tightening talk started in December, but the action wasn't happening. Several people echoed that, and they pointed towards your office. What's your reaction to them saying that?
I don't have much of a reaction other than that can relitigate the facts. The fact is, the second the election was certified and we understood that Measure E had failed by a very slim margin, roughly 1,700 votes in a different direction, we'd be having a very different conversation today. That's out of 600,000 plus cast. We immediately instituted a hiring freeze, a stop funds block on discretionary spending, and taken other actions. Today is the next step in that. Between now and then, between that first step and now, we've seen things like the parking meter rates, the user fees. There's a lot behind this. Not all of it constitutes council action, so I'll be forgiving of the council members for maybe making that observation. They aren't necessarily updating the user fee nexus study that is required under the law before they can vote on a permit or a fine adjustment, right? We are doing the work. We will have the work done. We will pass a balanced, on-time budget. I don't have any doubt about that. But that work is not done in one city council committee hearing. That work is done daily and will continue going forward. Today is simply the announcement of a series of decisions that I want the public to be aware of. But there have been many that have predated this announcement today. There'll be many more in the months ahead, and I look forward to telling you all about them as they become available. Thank you.